The fourth sign is an insatiable need for control over every aspect of others' lives. This wasn't simply about authority in Stoic thought, it revealed something darker. The Stoics distinguished between legitimate leadership and pathological domination. A good leader guided with wisdom, allowing others their autonomy. Those driven by malice sought to crush autonomy entirely. Historical Rome provided countless examples. Emperors like Tiberius, retreating to Capri, maintained elaborate spy networks to monitor senators' private conversations. Not for security, for psychological control. They wanted their subjects to internalize surveillance, to censor their own thoughts before speaking them. Stoic philosophers themselves often became targets of such control. When Nero demanded absolute obedience, not just in actions but in thoughts, many Stoics faced a choice: submit completely or die. Epictetus chose death rather than pretend to believe obvious lies. His execution wasn't punishment for rebellion, was punishment for maintaining mental independence. The Stoics observed that controlling individuals operate through several methods. They monopolize decisions, insisting only they possess necessary wisdom. They restrict information, preventing others from forming independent judgments. They demand constant accountability while providing none themselves. They isolate their targets from alternative perspectives. Epictetus taught his students that external control was ultimately an illusion. Others could imprison your body, but your mind remained free unless you surrendered it. This philosophy frustrated controlling personalities throughout history because it meant their power had limits. They could compel action but never truly own another person's will. Financial control appeared frequently in Roman history. Wealthy patrons would provide for clients, then use that dependency as leverage. Marriage laws allowed husbands complete control over wives' property. These weren't merely cultural norms. Stoic philosophers specifically criticized them as tools of domination rather than legitimate authority. The fifth sign is compulsive lying, fabricating reality without apparent reason or remorse. The Stoics viewed truth as fundamental to human dignity. To live by lies was to reject reason itself, the quality that separated humans from beasts. Yet they frequently encountered individuals for whom lying was reflexive, almost recreational. Roman historians documented numerous pathological liars in positions of power. Emperor Commodus claimed gladiatorial victories he never earned, insisted on being worshipped as Hercules reborn, and rewrote historical events to place himself at their center. These weren't strategic deceptions for political gain, they were compulsive fabrications that served no logical purpose. Seneca observed that pathological liars often believe their own inventions. They don't merely deceive others, they reconstruct reality to match their preferences. This made them particularly dangerous because they operated without the constraints of truth. When reality contradicted their narrative, they simply rejected reality. The Stoics identified patterns in how pathological liars operate. They begin with small, unnecessary lies to test boundaries. They layer falsehoods, making it impossible to identify where deception begins. They react to being caught, not with shame but with elaborate justifications or counter-accusations. They lie even when truth would serve them better, because the deception itself provides satisfaction. Marcus Aurelius advised maintaining detailed records when dealing with chronic liars. Write down what was said, when, and by whom. The Stoics understood that over time, lies contradict each other, and documented evidence protects against manipulation of memory and perception. The ancient Stoics didn't advocate for revenge or retaliation against malicious individuals. Their solution was boundaries firm, clear, and consistently enforced. Cato the Younger exemplified this principle. When Julius Caesar attempted to manipulate him through flattery, threats, and political pressure, Cato maintained absolute boundaries. He wouldn't compromise his principles for any inducement. This cost him political power and eventually his life, but he preserved what mattered most to Stoics: integrity of character. Epictetus taught that boundaries begin with clear self-knowledge. Understand your values, identify what you will and won't accept, and communicate these limits plainly. Don't justify or over-explain, simply state your boundaries as facts about yourself. The Stoics emphasized that enforcing boundaries often requires difficult choices. You may need to distance yourself from family members, leave employment, or end relationships that consistently violate your limits. Their wisdom wasn't abstract philosophy, it was practical, survival knowledge earned through observation and sometimes bitter experience. These five signs: weaponized charm, absent empathy, sophisticated manipulation, controlling behavior, and pathological deception haven't changed in 2,000 years. Human nature remains constant. The Stoics' advice remains relevant. Observe carefully, trust your perception, maintain your boundaries, and never surrender your inner freedom. Your peace of mind is worth protecting. The ancient philosophers knew this truth, and they paid the ultimate price to preserve it. Most people approach discipline the wrong way. They believe it's about grinding through pain, forcing themselves to suffer more than others, or possessing some magical willpower that separates the strong from the weak. But this understanding couldn't be further from the truth. That approach leads to burnout, not breakthrough. It creates internal warfare, not lasting change. The ancient Stoics understood something profound about human nature that modern psychology is only now beginning to validate. Discipline isn't a personality trait you're born with or without. It's not about having an iron will or the ability to endure endless discomfort. True discipline is about designing your life so intelligently that doing the right thing becomes easier than giving in to temptation. It's about creating systems that work with your nature, not against it. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This statement reveals the foundation of Stoic discipline. It's not about controlling the uncontrollable or forcing yourself to meet impossible standards. It's about mastering what you actually can control: your environment, your habits, your thoughts, and your responses. When you align these elements with your values, discipline stops being a battle and becomes a natural expression of who you are. Consider how most people set goals. They decide to eat healthier, so they stock their pantry with junk food and rely on willpower to resist it. They want to exercise more, so they tell themselves they'll find motivation tomorrow. They aim to be productive, yet keep their phone within arm's reach, notifications constantly pulling their attention away. This is setting yourself up for failure. You're creating friction where there should be flow, obstacles where there should be clear paths. The Stoic approach inverts this completely. If you want to eat healthier, remove unhealthy food from your home entirely. The temptation isn't there to begin with. You're not using willpower to resist. You've eliminated the need to resist. Want to work out consistently? Lay out your gym clothes the night before. Schedule workouts like non-negotiable appointments. Remove every barrier between intention and action. This isn't weakness, it's strategic intelligence. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. But reactions happen in environments. If your environment constantly triggers poor reactions, you're fighting an uphill battle. The truly disciplined person doesn't fight more battles. They design their life to avoid unnecessary battles altogether. They create what researchers now call choice architecture, structuring decisions so the right choice is the obvious choice. Think about your morning routine. If your phone is next to your bed, the first thing you'll do is scroll through social media, flooding your mind with others' priorities before you've even considered your own. But if you move your phone to another room, you've made focus the default state. You haven't used willpower, you've used wisdom. You've applied the Stoic principle of controlling what you can control your environment to. Support what you value. Mindful mornings. This principle extends to every area of life. Willpower is like a battery that depletes throughout the day. The more decisions you force yourself to make, the more this battery drains. By evening, when willpower is lowest, temptation is strongest. This is why people who rely solely on willpower fail. They're using a finite resource to fight an infinite number of temptations. But discipline as a system doesn't drain willpower, it preserves it. When you automate good choices through environmental design, when you create routines that don't require constant decision-making, you're not using discipline, you're being disciplined. There's a crucial difference. One is exhausting effort, the other is effortless flow. The Stoics were masters of this distinction. They didn't believe in unnecessary suffering. They believed in aligning actions with values so seamlessly that virtue became natural. Seneca wrote that a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a person perfected without trials. But notice he's talking about meaningful trials that create growth, not pointless struggles that create burnout. The friction is purposeful, not random. When you view discipline through this lens, everything changes. You stop asking, how can I force myself to do this? And start asking, how can I make this the obvious choice? You stop fighting yourself and start designing for yourself. You recognize that the struggle isn't a sign of strength, it's often a sign of poor planning.